What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JB Sports, back again with another one. Former middleweight champion Daniel Jacobs returns to the ring this Friday to take on Gabe Rosado in a super middleweight matchup. This fight is a grudge match. As Gabe Rosado said earlier, it's been a lot of static between me and Daniel Jacobs. It's time we settle our differences in the ring. And this is a very intriguing matchup. It's a shame that it's going to get overshadowed this weekend by the Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones fight that takes place a day later in Los Angeles, California in the Staples Center. But I'm here to break down this particular matchup because I'm really more excited about this fight really than the Mike Tyson Roy Jones fight. I'll be breaking that fight down in a later video, but I'm really intrigued by this matchup, man. These guys have been beefing pretty much for the last several months, and it's time for this thing to come to a head. It's time for these guys to mix it up in the ring, man, and find out who's the better man. Now, Daniel Jacobs is a guy that's fresh off a victory over Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. That fight took place in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, to be exact. That fight ended in a lot of controversy as the fans were not pleased with Chavez's quitting in that fight, and therefore Daniel Jacobs was able to get the victory, and the fans showed their displeasure as they were throwing bottles and all kind of stuff in the ring, and it kind of took away from the moment of victory from Daniel Jacobs. As he said, he didn't quit. He didn't have anything to do with Daniel Jacobs. He didn't have anything to do with Julio Cesar Chavez quitting and giving up after he allegedly broke his nose, which he said was caused by Daniel Jacobs' headbutt. But the fans showed their displeasure in a big way, and they were throwing all kind of stuff in their bottles, probably was throwing some nachos, popcorn, hot dogs, all kind of stuff in that ring, man. They were very upset, wasn't pleased with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., whose dad is Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., who's one of the greatest fighters, not only in Mexican history, but in boxing history altogether, man. This guy's a great fighter and a great champion, and people couldn't believe that his offspring would stoop to this level and quit in a fight that was started out very competitive, very competitive. Daniel Jacobs was starting to take over the fight, and at that point, Julio Cesar Chavez pretty much waved the white flag and quit in that fight, and the fans were not happy about that. But Gabriel Rosado made some interesting comments about Daniel Jacobs. He said he basically questioned Daniel Jacobs' character. Not his personal character, but his character in the ring. He said in the fight against Canelo Alvarez, which was a unification matchup in the middleweight division, that Daniel Jacobs was throwing a lot of punches, was missing a lot, and was timid, basically what he said. He fought a very timid fight. He fought a very he fought a very conservative fight. You know, he fought that fight, a lot of that fight he fought on the back foot. He fought a lot of that fight on the back foot. He didn't come forward a lot. He allowed basically Canelo Alvarez to kind of back him down in that ring, walk him down in that ring. And he didn't show that he could, actually being a naturally bigger guy, he fought a lot of that fight on the back foot, which was surprising to Gabe Rosado, and that's what he mentioned in the interview. He said the guy was, he's not going to say he showed character flaws in that ring on that particular night. He said he don't know if the bright lights and fighting on a big-time matchup with Canelo Alvarez, who is the pound-for-pound pay-per-view king in boxing, if not the pound-for-pound boxing in the sport of boxing. He said he maybe got caught up in that type of fighting in the big lights, fighting in a big pay-per-view match. No, that fight was not a pay-per-view fight. That fight was actually on the zone, but it was a fight that was promoted. It was a fight that was a high-profile fight. Basically, you fighting the #1 guy in boxing. And he said maybe the occasion got to Daniel Jacobs. He said Daniel Jacobs mentioned that the weight might have been a problem, squeezing down to 160 pounds, that he had outgrown that division. He said that was some excuses, but he said maybe that's the reason he didn't perform up to his capabilities in that fight. But he said he showed character flaws. He wasn't aggressive in that fight, and he fought too timid. And basically he said he fought too conservative and called him out on that situation, man. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this fight takes place, man. And it's been a lot of beef. It's been a lot of verbal battles going on between these two guys. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, man, when these two guys mix it up in the middle of the ring, man. It's going to be very, very interesting, man, as I look at my other phone here. It's gonna be very, very interesting to see how this what happened and see how this situation plays out coming up this Friday night. It's gonna be going down in United States of America for sure. It's gonna be going down, and I think it's gonna be going down in if I'm not mistaken, it's gonna be going down in Florida, Hollywood, Florida. If I'm not mistaken, this fight is gonna be taking place, man. So we're gonna see what happens. We're gonna see what transpires. But I think if this fight would have took place maybe 6 years ago, I think this would be a real competitive fight. It almost would be a 50-50 fight. But I think the wars and the battles that Gabe Rosado has been in, I think it's gonna has taken its toll over him. I don't think he's the same fighter that fought Triple G in 2014. If that, he took a real battering in that fight, as the fight was very competitive early on, but his face could not hold up. He got cut in that fight, and he was basically a bloody mess at the end of that fight as a referee stopped that fight. Not even been a referee. I think it was his corner. His corner stopped the fight. They waved the white flag and stopped the fight maybe 2 rounds too late. That fight probably should have been stopped early. I think it was stopped in the 7th round. Probably should have been stopped in the 5th round. He started bleeding and cutting, I think, about round 4. And that fight probably should have been stopped shortly after. He couldn't see a lot of those punches coming because he was bleeding. His whole face was bloody red. Blood all streaming down both sides of his faces. And I think it hurt his vision. And, the blood, when your blood is leaking like it was leaking, it's going to weaken you. And he just was not the same fighter he was early in that fight. He was taking a battering, man. He was getting punched, and the punches were moving him all across the ring, man. And they finally, his corner finally stopped that fight. But before that fight, man, Gabe Rosado was a real good fighter, man. The guy actually is a guy that's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is a city that's known to have great fighters, great champions come out of there. Joe Frazier, Bernard Hopkins, Danny Garcia. So he's coming from a fighting city. Rocky Balboa, he made a lot of movies, a lot of franchises, and they call him the Italian Stallion in that movie. He was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So that's a fighting city. I believe Gabe Rosado was actually in one of Rocky movies, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been one of the, maybe in the Creed movie or one of those movies. He's in one of those Rocky movies. And so he's from the city of Philadelphia, and he's a guy that was actually a good boxer. He could really box. He had a real good jab, good right hand. He could fight from a distance. He could control distance. He was a real good boxer with good skills. But he was a guy that when he got hit, he would try to get his get back and try to come forward and land punches instead of staying disciplined and and using the jab and using your skills. But he's a very, very skillful fighter. But the problem is his face don't hold up. His face is just not gonna hold up. You catch him with some shots, man, he gets cut a little too easy, as we seen in the Triple G fight. And that's been his problem throughout his career, as he was fought Peter Quillen. Peter Quillen is a common opponent. He's actually fought Daniel Jacobs also. But in the fight between Peter Quillen and Gabe Rosado, his face didn't hold up in that fight. And he's actually coming on strong in that fight before that fight was stopped. And Peter Quillen was awarded the TKO. But that was a good fight, as Peter Quillen came out strong but started fading, and Gabe Rosado was coming on, man. He was actually backing up Peter Quillen, going to the body, hitting him with good combinations, but his face just cannot hold up, and that fight ended up getting stopped over cuts. So I think that's going to be the problem in this fight, man. I don't think his face is going to hold up. Now, he has a new trainer in Freddie Roach. Freddie Roach is going to bring a more aggressive style of fighting. As you know, Freddie Roach's his fighters are very aggressive, very offensive-minded. They'll take one to land two, as we've seen with a Manny Pacquiao. Guys of that caliber that have been fighting under the tutelage of Freddie Roach. The only guy that I could see that fought under Freddie Roach that was a boxer and was a guy that was very hard to hit, and he fought his style, was a boxer, very slick, very technically sound, had great upper body movement, was James Toney. He fought with Freddie Roach as his trainer. And he was the only guy that I know that fought under Freddie Roach that was defensively responsible, pretty much throughout the fight. Was a guy that was very hard to hit, man, and then had the power and actually could knock you out while he was laying on the ropes. That's the type of power James Toney had. So, but for the most part, fighters under that fight in the wild card gym, that fight under Freddie Roach's tutelage, they're very offensive-minded fighters. So I'm expecting Gabe Rosado to be a more offensive-minded fighter, come forward type of fighter. He'll be trying to go to the body, He'll be trying to land the left hand, shoot out the left jab, come over the top with the right hand. He'll be a guy that's using head movement to get inside and attack his opponent. And basically, he'll be looking to just throw a lot of punches and try to overwhelm Daniel Jacobs with precision and activity. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see how the fight plays out. But Daniel Jacobs, in his last performance against Julio Cesar Chavez, was fighting a guy that probably was, on fight night, was probably 20, 25 pounds heavier than he was. He basically was fighting a cruiserweight. As Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. once again failed to make weight. That fight was supposed to take place at super middleweight, if I'm not mistaken, but he couldn't make the weight, so they moved it up from 168 to 172. He was able to make that weight, and by the time the next day came, and that was fight day, he probably came into the ring probably close to 190 pounds. So he came into that fight as a cruiserweight. So Daniel Jacobs had to kind of feel his power and be very cautious to start that fight off. And that led for some good moments for Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. But as the fight played out, Daniel Jacobs was a much more skillful fighter, the more experienced fighter, and a guy that's been fighting, man. A guy that's been way more active than Julio Cesar Chavez. A guy that has more tools in the toolbox, and he's able to, outbox and ultimately make Julio Cesar Chavez quit in that fight in Phoenix, Arizona. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires. But I'm looking for this fight to be very exciting, man. It's going to be a grudge match. But the question that needs to be asked is, will Daniel Jacobs get caught up in his feelings and try to go toe-to-toe with Gabe Rosado and give Gabe Rosado a chance to land something that could possibly hurt and knock out Daniel Jacobs. Daniel Jacobs has been knocked out before by Dimitri Purov. You remember that fight? He got caught. He said later on that he had a death in the family, and he was still traumatized from that and still going through a situation with that. Maybe he shouldn't have took that fight. Maybe he should have rescheduled that fight. But he went on and fought and got caught and lost that fight. But he's been knocked out before. He was knocked down in the Triple G fight. He was knocked down by feather-fisted Sergio Mora. So the guy has shown to be kind of chinny. So you would think he would be able to use his skills as a guy that's got fast hands, especially for the super middleweight division. He had fast hands for the middleweight division. He can use his jab and use his right hand, use his uppercut, uses his left hook to the body, and just use his overall athletic ability that he will have over Gabe Rosado in a fight, a disciplined, smart, strategic fight. But like I said, these guys have been going back and forth. Gabe Rosado said it. It's been a lot of static between me and Jacobs, and we got to settle our difference in the ring. And if Daniel Jacobs goes in there with the mindset, hey, I'm finna shut this guy up. He's been running off at the mouth too much. He's been talking loud, but ain't saying nothing. Saying what he gonna do. Bumping his gums. I'm gonna go in here and put this boy to sleep. I'm going here and knock this boy out and make a statement and let him know that he's not on my level. That I'm on another level. That I'm on a journey, and it's just a matter of time before I become a champion at super middleweight division. If Daniel Jacobs come in with that mindset, that will give Gabe Rosado a chance to score the upset. So that's what it's going to boil down to, ladies and gentlemen. With Daniel Jacobs fight a strategic fight, if he fights that, he should win this fight on points or maybe by late stoppage. But if he goes in there with the mindset of I want to go toe-to-toe with Gabe Rosado, I don't like this guy. This guy's got on my last nerve, and go toe-to-toe, a la Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran in the first fight in the brawl in Montreal, when he should have boxed Roberto Duran, but he wanted to prove a point because Roberto Duran had got under his skin in a press conference, called his wife the B word, and Sugar Ray Leonard was a proud black man, had to prove a point and win the ring, and went toe-to-toe and fought Roberto Duran fight and ended up losing his welterweight title. Will that be the case with Daniel Jacobs? Or will he fight a smart, strategic fight like he did when he fought guys like, other guys? The guy he fought, he's fought guys throughout his career, boxing guys giving guys boxing lessons like he did in the Sergio Mora first and second fight. He got a little bit too aggressive in the first fight and got dropped, but in the second fight, he fought a more disciplined fight. You can be aggressive and come forward at times, but basically fight a smart fight like he did with, that's the name that was escaping me, but Derevchenko. When he fought Derevchenko, he fought a smart, disciplined fight. If that Daniel Jacobs shows up, he should outpoint Gabe Rosado and maybe even possibly stop him late in that fight. But if the Daniel Jacobs that showed up that fought Peter Quillen, which was probably his best win of his career when he had devastating first round knockout over the previously the unbeaten Peter Quillen that was going into that fight. He went into that fight unbeaten, undefeated. Peter Quillen and Daniel Jacobs knocked him out, as that was a fight for bragging rights in New York, the borough. Daniel Jacobs from Brownsville. I think Peter Quillen was from Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken. He was from and that was basically for bragging rights for the city of New York, and for the state of New York and the city of New York, and for the borough. That was for bragging rights. For those guys were from neighboring places, from neighborhoods that were close to each other, that had a rivalry, that had guys that knew each other. From Peter Quillen knew guys from Daniel Jacobs' neighborhood. Daniel Jacobs knew guys from Peter Quillen neighborhood. So whoever won that fight and their friends and their partners and the people they rode with was gonna have bragging rights. So that fight was a must-see TV type of matchup. And Daniel Jacobs went into that fight and put on a devastating performance as he knocked out Peter Quillen in the first round of that fight that took place in the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, which took place in front of a rabid crowd. And that atmosphere was very electric. I remember that fight, man. I remember watching that fight on, I believe it was on Showtime, and he put on a devastating performance. He's able to hurt Peter Quillen and drop Peter Quillen in that first round. Peter Quillen got up, but he was on shaky legs, was still badly hurt, and Daniel Jacobs jumped on him, pounced on him, and went in for the kill, and was ultimately knocked out Peter Quillen in the first round. As Peter Quillen got back up, but was still on shaky legs, eyes were still all over the place, and the referee waved that fight off, and that was a devastating victory by Daniel Jacobs, the best win in my opinion of his career. And if that Daniel Jacobs shows up, he could possibly get Gabe Rosado out early like he did Peter Quillen, but he's opening himself up for maybe getting caught with a shot too. Peter Quillen was a more devastating puncher than Gabe Rosado has shown to be, but Gabe Rosado has decent power. And any guy can get you out of there if they catch you with a punch, the right punch, especially a punch that you don't see. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires. But I'm very much forward looking for this particular matchup. But I think Daniel Jacobs is going to win this fight because I don't think Gabe Rosado's face is going to hold up. I see this fight getting stopped due to cuts, due to bleeding. Daniel Jacobs is going to be looking to set the jab up, set the right hand up. He's going to be catching him with some combinations. He's going to be really on the aggressive. I think Gabe Rosado will have his moments. I think he'll be landing some good shots to the body. I think he'll be landing his overhand right. I think he'll be landing his left jab. He'll be more aggressive. And he's learned some things under Freddie Roach as he changed trainers. He said he needed a change. His old trainer has took him as far as he could go in his career, and he needed a new trainer. And he said he feels very rejuvenated under the tutelage of Freddie Roach. And Daniel Jacobs has left his old trainer. Remember his trainer, Rozier? They're no longer together. They had a dispute over money, and Rozier has now moved on. He's not training Daniel Jacobs anymore. So Daniel Jacobs got another lead trainer that's going to be in his ear and getting him ready for this fight. So we'll see, will that be an advantage for Gabe Rosado, or will things be pretty much status quo with Daniel Jacobs, and he'll be doing the things and being successful just like he was under the tutelage of trainer Rozier. So we'll see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But I'm looking for a 9th round TKO victory for Daniel Jacobs in a very exciting, a very back-and-forth battle, a fight that will be very fan-friendly, very exciting. But it's a shame that nobody's going to be talking about it after it happens, because people are going to be getting ready for Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. That's going down a day later in Los Angeles, California, in the Staples Centers. And I've heard they've broke all kind of pre-sale records for this fight. And we're still 4 days. We're still what? That was 4 days away. That was I think I heard that Tuesday, that they had broke all kind of pre-sale records for that fight. So, you talking about, Mayweather's been on pay-per-view. Canelo Alvarez has been on pay-per-view. So they saying Roy Jones and Mike Tyson Jr. has broke all pre-sale pay-per-view records. So that just lets you know what kind of buzz this fight is getting right now. You're gonna have a lot of boxing fans tuning in for that fight, and a lot of casual boxing fans tuning in for that fight. So that's the difference between that fight and this fight. This fight here is for the hardcore boxing fans. Gabe Rosado versus Daniel Jacobs. And I am a hardcore boxing fan, that being me, JB Sports. And I'm very much looking forward to this matchup. It's not for a belt. You know, it's not for anything but two guys that don't like each other. Got a lot of static. Been going back and forth for the last several months, and it's time for them to get in the ring and settle their difference. The great Muhammad Ali said, if you can't get it on, no, he said, no, Muhammad Ali, the great Muhammad Ali, the greatest Muhammad Ali said, if we can't get along, we got to get it on. And that's what they got to do. Daniel Jacobs versus Gabe Rosado going down, Hollywood, Florida, if I'm not mistaken. And that's going down. It will be on the zone. I'll be checking this fight out, man. But that's what I like. I like Daniel Jacobs. 9th round, TKO. Due to cuts, bleeding, they stopped the fight. And Daniel Jacobs is the winner, and he moves on and faces the winner. That's what he said he wants. He said he wants the winner of Canelo Alvarez versus Callum Smith. Once he's victorious if he's victorious against Gabe Rosado. If Canelo Alvarez wins, I don't see Canelo Alvarez fighting Daniel Jacobs next. I don't see that happening. But if Callum Smith wins, I can see that fight happening next. Callum Smith versus Daniel Jacobs, that could be a possible matchup. You know, if Callum Smith's victorious. Because both of those guys have the same promoter in Eddie Hearn. So I can see that matchup taking place if Callum Smith is victorious. But if Canelo Alvarez is victorious, look for Canelo Alvarez to take on Triple G in a third fight. I would look for that fight to take place, or maybe he fights Caleb Plant. I think those are the two guys that Canelo Alvarez is looking forward to if he's victorious versus Callum Smith on December 19th. As we get closer to that particular fight, I'll be breaking that fight down and giving you my prediction on that particular matchup. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires. Subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend, and give me your predictions on who you think is going to win this fight between Daniel Jacobs versus Gabe Rosado. Give me your predictions. Who you think is going to win? You think it's going to be a decision, or what round the person that you think is going to win this matchup, what round you think it's going to end in? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend. I holla.